Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Tom Goodlet, author of Blind Potential. Tom, welcome to the show.
Paul, I'm so happy to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to get started?
Let's make it happen, Captain. Let's do this.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
All right, great question. The piece of advice I'd give is know that it takes a team to create a book. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that, I think sometimes we can get this idea in our head that our book's an excuse to kind of maybe go hide in a shed somewhere, write create this great book, and you can do this all on your own. And the reality is it doesn't quite work like that. I mean, you can write a great manuscript, but to get that book out to the rest of the world, it's going to take a team. And if you're an author who's working on a book, then it's okay to start early, kind of building up the team around you that's going to help you get this book out to the rest of the world. I would say it this way too. I think there is something in us. Sometimes we think we kind of chase after the idea of autonomy and the idea of trying to do things by ourselves, kind of be our own boss, be our own man. But I'll put it this way. If you become the CEO, you're still accountable to a board of directors. If you start your own business, you still got to keep the customers happy, or else you don't have a business. And so we're never truly independent. And the sooner we can kind of embrace that and realize that it's a team effort, the better. And I know you use the stat, and I agree with it too. It's somewhere it's 81% of Americans say they have a book in them somewhere in their head or their heart. That's about 200 million Americans, but less than 1% actually get it out to the world.
Exactly.
And I think that's because there's a set of skills that comes with writing a book, but there's a different set of skills that comes with, publishing a book, and different personalities too. I mean, the person who's going to do a great cover for you has a different personality than the person who's going to proof it and edit it for you and help turn it into a book. And so you're going to deal with other people. And so really, I think the trick is to let people know what you're doing sooner than possible and what you're trying to do, and then invite them along on the journey. And you get an overall. You'll find cheerleaders you didn't know you had, and helpers you didn't know, people that you didn't know were ready to help you, and be excited about this book you want to get out to the world.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Oh yeah, I think the hardest part is not giving up midway through. I think there is this. We generally start books and projects. We start well. But there is kind of this slump that I think happens for all authors, that happens really for any project leader. Actually, there's I saw this stat the other day that 81% of people who actually start the 81% of the people, the less than 1% who actually start on their book, that 4% of them get going, but less than 10% of that 4% make it past chapter 2. I don't know if you can track with all the math, but basically it means that most people who even give a whirl at this book, they can't make it past chapter 2. And there's this slump that happens, and I think it goes back to remembering why you're doing it. Why are you putting out this book? And if we can remember that, if we can write that down, if we can have that in front of us, so we can remember why we started this project, that's going to be important around the time where we start to forget the why, to make sure that having it in front of us. And the other thing too, I would say, is having those people around you. Surround yourself with other people who are pursuing their dreams. Maybe they're working on a book, maybe they're working on a project, just so they can spur you on, because there's inevitably going to be that time where you want to give up.
Well, plus the other thing too is, they can always outline that sucker out. It doesn't have to be in chronological order. So they could focus on what they're most passionate about first, and then do the next thing, and then the next thing, and do it that way. And that way you're at least getting the creative process going, because one of my favorite quotes is from Lao Tzu, and that is, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first steps. And I think it's just getting started, but then keeping that momentum going, but they have to focus on what they're most passionate about first, and then let the creative process flow.
Well, that's great. I agree, man. I think it's about progress over perfection. especially when you're in that writing process. And sometimes it doesn't mean you can't go back and perfect it, but you're going for, word count. You're going for, I think Seth Godin, his quote is, just try to write 2 crappy pages a day.
Yep.
They don't have to be great. They don't have to be fantastic. And I think you got to kind of build that in. You got to, for me, writing a book, it was simply just, I like tasks. I just gave myself a daily task of just working towards my dream about 15 minutes a day and just chipping away at that. And I thought what would take me a year took me 9 months. I know some people who do bigger allotments of time and get there further faster, but I think you're right. It's just kind of chipping away at that and keeping it steady. And again, not getting lost in the, well, this isn't exactly how I want to write it, so now I'm stuck. No, you just keep going. Maybe give yourself like a note that you're going to go fix this and clean this up later. But right now it's progress over perfection.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Sure. Yeah. I think you got to remember that social media is your friend, and so are your friends that are on social media. I mean, the beauty of the age we live in is there's a tool through social media that can rapidly get a message out to multiple people who actually want to hear it. And so for me, I used a lot of social media with launching. We built a Facebook book launch team, so people who could kind of be a part of what we were doing and help us share it, get it out there, especially when it was time to pre-launch and launch the book. Another thing too is when you put it out on social media that you're working on a book or you're getting ready to get a book published. I think it typically is a minority out of the people who follow you, but there is a minority cheering section that begins to show up, and it might not always be the people you expected to cheer you on, but that's your audience. Those people who are excited that you're writing this book, that they're ones who are naturally want to share what you're doing. Those are the people to reply to them first, to encourage them, to encourage you. That's your team waiting to be built right there. And they're already excited about what you're doing, and they're going to share it with other people who will be excited about what you're doing. And it really has a cascading effect. And that's the beauty of social media. If you get the right people on board and they show up when you start sharing, but they'll share as well, and they'll help you get your book sales, help you get your book out, and help the world that wants to know about it find out about you.
And what strategies have you done to build this following? Who have you targeted, and what social media outlets have you been using?
That's great. Well, I think part of that decision depends on your book. So for me, I wanted to get open some doors within some business industry. So I used LinkedIn a lot. I worked up to 30,000 followers, which is kind of the max on LinkedIn, and just took the time to get there and build those connections. And so that has helped me get the word out. I think you can't avoid Facebook. I know sometimes you have critics that'll say Facebook's dying, but there's still 2.5 billion people on it. And so it's not dying anytime soon. It's the number one social media platform. But I think if there is an audience, if your target audience for your book, might have women that and it's more crafting. You got to go for Pinterest. YouTube is another one. It just depends on that market. I would say start with Facebook, and then depending on who your target market is which social media platform you're going to spend a lot of time on and a lot of time advertising your book through.
Well, you mentioned LinkedIn, so what were you doing to build up those followers?
Oh man, there's a long list actually. I pulled in some mentors when I was getting ready to do this book. One of which he just got through like a whole course on how you could do LinkedIn. So I sat through him for several things. He had several tactics that he had learned, and I just took them and went hog wild with in order to build up your LinkedIn. There's different software that can help you with that. There's different methods, but basically it's targeting people who you think could use the book or would help promote the book or could benefit from it. People you can link up with on LinkedIn that have similar interests and similar goals, and just building that. There's about 10 to 15 things you should do. I know we don't have time for all that, but you could Google that, the techniques to build your following on LinkedIn, and you'll find all sorts of techniques. And
well,
for the most part,
I tell you what, tell us your top two strategies for building the following.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one is invite people to go to pick a search on LinkedIn that I knew some of my demographic that I was going for just from some previous research, so there was kind of some professionals in a certain area, so I targeted, like, you can put in search words. So if your book's for teachers, you could search teachers and it'll come up on the profile, and all of a sudden you can start seeing, okay, well, here's a teacher, and you can begin to filter that and target in, and so you want to target in, okay, well, my book's going to help them with education, or my book's going to do it with that. I mean, there's it's so one is in your searches for people that you want to connect with is use a search, type in search words that are going to filter it for your target audience, and begin to identify them, and start reaching out to them and start connecting with them. And you don't want to waste time with people who they have no interest. You're going to be bugging them, and they're going to be wasting of your how many people you can connect with. So that's one. Another one is just, kind of just, there's conversation pieces you can have, and encouraging them as they encourage you, and interacting with the communication piece and the endorsement piece and all that, and just kind of scratching each other's back, seeing how you can help them win with what they're doing, and often they'll return the favor and help you with ways that you can win. So there you go. How's that?
Oh, that is wonderful. I appreciate you letting me call you out a little bit on that, because I knew
you
had some
no
great
problem.
strategies. When I have someone on the show that has built a following to 30,000, you not only had my curiosity, but you have my attention. So
yeah. Well, I can tell you this too, and it depends on, specifically LinkedIn. There are some software too that you can get that'll help you. Like, I realized, okay, I've started to get followings. You can start to even target even more who you want to follow and who you want to follow you. And there's when you're getting up into the thousands, there's some software that can help kind of fine tune that, and help you kind of organize that a little more too. And so there's some resources I found even later in the game, and help you get your message out. Yep.
So you're talking like Meet Leonard and some of those other ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of them, and there's always new ones, and always changing too, and getting better and better at how they do that. But yeah, and very inexpensive.
Well, and to tell our audience a little more about that, so basically Meet Leonard, and they've got several other variations, but you can connect up to 200 people a day via doing that. So you have the opportunity to really exponentially increase your following, and it's all automated. You put in information, the reach out. One of the things I would suggest too is always make it a personalized message, because that's how you and I connected. Remember, my team did a reach out and go, "Hey Tom, great to connect with you. Noticed you have a book. Would love to have you on the show. Here's a link to book a time." And then later on that day, we had a second message going through where we gave you a free PDF version of our Get Published book, just so you know a little bit more about what we do and how we help, because you and I are both publishers. So it's just a good way for us to show, hey, these are some things that we do. This is how we help other people in their journey.
Yep, and you can search each other, looking for publishers, looking for authors, best-selling authors. Again, scratching each other's back. Here's a free copy of my book. Here's a free copy of my book. Those kind of things. I think sometimes we get the idea that if somebody else wins, we somehow lose, and I don't think the math works that way.
Exactly.
I think when somebody else wins, we win, and it provides the more we each win, the more opportunities it provides for each other. And so there's plenty of blessing to go around, and the more we can team. Again, it's not if you go back to the book thing, it's all about team. It's not a solo effort if you really want to get this book out to the world, and it is a team effort, and people will be excited to join your team and what you're trying to do, and so you want to take advantage of that.
Well, and
enjoy the ride.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's the biggest lesson I've learned. When you give back, when you help people, it comes back in a beautiful way, and it's not with the expectation. It's just how things work in life. When you help other people, when you find ways to work together, everybody wins. Absolutely.
Well, yep. And then I'll throw one more at you, man, Paul.
Sure.
And that is that it's much more exciting to be able to celebrate it with other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So when your book's doing well, and life is often about the moments after the moment. In other words, there's great moments where good things happen to us, but if we don't have a moment after the moment where we have people to share it with, then we kind of really miss out on a big part of life. And so we want a circle of people to share the victories with, and it just makes them that more meaningful.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to ask, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Nice. Man, to whittle it down to one, I Can't. Sorry, but I'm gonna go. Well, I love the Bible. That's my number one go-to. But there's two books that really influenced me in my life. One is John Maxwell's 360-Degree Leader, and it's just because these books happened in a pivotal time, came to me in a pivotal time in my life. And the deal about 360-Degree Leader, he basically just takes away any excuse. A lot of times we'll make the excuse that, well, I have a terrible leader above me, so therefore when they get better, then I'll get better. And it totally takes away that excuse. It's going, no matter where you are in the org chart, no matter where you are in life, it's your decision whether or not to be a great leader of others and yourself. And so that's a book that highly inspired me. And then the other one's 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. That's just a great, man, that'll kick your butt. It's I'd say about a third of the book is just messes with philosophy of why not? Why can't you start going after your dream? I'd say another third of the book is productivity. He's got all these productivity hacks to help you build time for your dream. And then he gets into the weeds a little bit with some procedures of how, if you wanted to kind of build a platform, a business, that kind of thing, how to go about doing it. But it's a great read. It's a great book.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Yeah, man, my favorite quote, let's see. I'm going to go with Jesus on this one. It's a verse out of the Bible in the book of Mark, chapter 10, verse 27. And he's telling his disciples, he says, with man, this is impossible, but not with God, all things are possible with God. And I love that one. I love, I think this, I wrote a book, Blind Potential. Potential requires positivity. You got to be able to kind of clear the cloud and see what could be. And so I love the idea that nothing is impossible, especially with God. So I love that quote and try to live by it.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Sure. You can go to my website, which is tomgoodlet.com. That's Tom, nothing fancy there. But Goodlet is Goodlet.com, tomgoodlet.com. You could also reach out to me on email. You can just go for tom@tomgoodlet.com as well. And good ways to reach out. I'd say LinkedIn, but I'm maxed out. So just go to the website.
You had one job, you did it well.
I know. There you go.
Well, Tom, Thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your off the journey ahead.
Paul, thanks so much for having me, man. I love what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.